In Matthew 18, Jesus gave us an incredible promise. He said, "Where 2 or 3 have gathered in my name, I am there in the midst of them." In the early years of my career as a teacher, I could have gathered with the Christians I knew at work. But unfortunately, I had accepted the notion that I was to keep my faith to myself while I was at school. As a result, I often felt isolated and alone as a believer, and I struggled to know how to follow Jesus in this place that I felt called to be. But one night at a football game, I had an unplanned encounter with an unlikely person, and all that began to change. A teacher I barely knew was standing alone by a fence near the end zone, and the Lord nudged me to pull up beside him. What began as just a friendly chat between colleagues soon turned into something much more. He began to open up and share about a very difficult time he was going through in his personal life. His world was literally upside down, and his heart was broken. But at one point he made this comment: "The only thing getting me through this storm is I am leaning hard on the Lord." Well, that took our conversation in a whole new direction, and we ended up having a time of deep, meaningful fellowship that night. The game came and went, and I don't recall who won or even who we played. But I did learn that evening that this teacher on the other side of campus was so much more than just a colleague. He was my brother in Christ. Our conversation that night left us realizing that there was something wrong with this picture. How could 2 people who love God and were striving to serve Him in the same school never know about each other? This needed to change. So we began to meet for breakfast at a coffee shop near the school a couple times a month just for fellowship. Pretty soon others began to join us, and some mornings we needed to pull up extra chairs so we could fit around the same booth. Eventually it was decided it'd be best if we moved our little staff fellowship to campus, where others who couldn't make it to an early breakfast could join us. Once we did that, we discovered more and more people on our staff who loved the Lord and shared this calling to care about the children that He loves so much. In time, John 15:16 became our theme verse, where Jesus said, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last." And so began our staff fellowship group we called LIFT. Lasting Impact Fellowship for Teachers. All staff were invited, not just teachers, but through LIFT, God began to draw people of faith together into a community right there at school. A community that provided a place for fellowship, encouragement, support, and a community where people could pray for one another and collectively could pray for their school. Once you realize there are other Christian educators down the hall and throughout your building, you don't have to feel isolated and alone anymore. And when you realize you're not alone, you don't have to be afraid to let your light shine. What's it like at your school? Do Christians feel isolated and alone? If so, it's time to reject the notion that you have to keep your faith to yourself. It's time to come out of hiding and find each other.